Hey, peace, y'all. Welcome back, man. Welcome to another CHUCG Talk, your favorite payday show. I am your host. I am one of your hosts, Brother Lee. This is Brother Eric. Hey, so we're excited to see y'all today, man.
We're excited to see y'all today, man.
Yeah, and it's good to have y'all back. I hope y'all got paid today.
Good to have y'all back. I hope y'all got paid today.
Why you keep on repeating me?
It's the sequel, right?
I guess that kind of. I got y'all.
Yeah.
Okay. So look. I get okay. So, hey, look. Before we jump into joke of the day, we're gonna do it a little different this time. We're gonna take a step back. Today, we're gonna talk about governance and accountability and Black infrastructure and movement. If you've been tuning in or you've been watching, you know we talked about both of those topics before. But apparently, and what's clear now is that Brother Eric is repeating what I say because today is a sequel for both of those episodes, but inside of one. I like that.
I like two inside of. That's like buy one, get one free.
BOGO. All right. Seriously though. So let's jump into joke of the day. Last week we had Brother Eric. This week we got Brother Lee for the joke of the day, and I'm gonna keep it simple. No, as y'all should. I'm gonna keep it simple. I don't like to hold y'all up too much. It wasn't until yesterday that I knew that pancakes and waffles are the same thing. The waffles just have abs. So we're
Hey, yo, that's your joke. That's probably one of the best jokes we had on here, bro.
Oh shit! Oh my god! Yo.
That was great.
Ooh, that's a good 30, 45, 50-second edit right there. Good God. Oh, wait till I show y'all the picture. So yeah, waffles are just pancakes for ass. So yeah, y'all got it. All right.
Hey, yo, hold on. Yo, that was great. Oh, I wasn't ready for that.
Wait till you see the picture. The picture almost put tears in my eyes. Oh, I'm telling y'all. Okay, now that my ribs are stop touching, so we should be good to go now. So yeah, that's the joke of the day, man. Waffles are just pancakes with abs, man. You know what I mean? So yeah, happy to be here for the sequel. Happy to be talking about these topics again. Clearly, we brought them back because man, I just felt like we had a real good groove, and it was one of those things that it felt unfinished.
Yeah.
And we got more questions about it after, so it was like, all right, let's just we can't do 2 more episodes of each one, so let's just put them together and have that BOGO.
Yeah, man.
So we talked about governance and accountability before, and we talked about Black infrastructures and movement. However, Brother Eric wasn't here to talk about Black infrastructures and movement. However, we shared part two. Yeah, we shared governance and accountability. So we can talk a little bit about it, but we got bell questions as well, and I think our bell questions are really extensive. So I would say talk a little bit, share a little bit of perspective on each side, and then we can jump right into the bell question. I'm excited about the bell question today.
Yeah. I think, man, I ain't gonna do too much. I just think that one of the important things to note, and the reason why I think we had to, you know what I'm saying, like make a you know what I mean, like a reverse, to this topic, is because I think it's important, and I think it's one of those things that white supremacy, and specifically, this is the other thing I've been thinking about, bro. I've been thinking a lot about how like liberalism and liberal culture has created a PC culture or political correct culture where you can't just do regular stuff. And one of those things is, I'm free to do what I want.
Right.
But if you're interested as a people, as an individual, you can do what you want.
Right, absolutely.
But if you are operating with the context of a collective, which movement assumes that you're moving collectively to something, you have to have collective norms, ideally that are created together rather than some people up at the top telling you what to do.
Agreed.
You create them together, you evaluate them, they change over time. But as that happens, I think it's important that we are accountable to one another because, again, people, I think, get to the point where they out of their parents' house and now can't nobody tell me nothing what to do. And I think that not only I think it's around it's ego, but also I think that it's counterproductive to movement. You can't have that. And so, I mean, when I think about that and I think about accountability and thinking about like movement infrastructure, it's like, in order for us to seek justice or equity, you have to have a movement framework that's coordinated, and one thing that you're coordinated or that coordination is based on is common rules. And I think regenerative and restorative. I don't even know what to call it other than like consequences, but whatever to call it.
No, that's
but
real.
I think that like there has to be some level of accountability so that if Brother Lee say, you know what, yo, I'm gonna wear black tomorrow and you wear white, and if I wear white and he wear white, I should be able to say, hey, bro, like, yo, you had on white.
Right.
That's not what you said.
Right.
Without it being contentious, it's just like, yo, hey, I want to acknowledge that, yo, like you kind of like you blanked up. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to. We can't curse on it, but like that, like dang, bro, like dang, what happened? So, with that being said, I feel like at least from my standpoint, that's what I think is important. I think that like at the smallest level is that, but at the larger level, is you talking about people moving in the same direction, and you can't if you don't have the same standards of operation.
No, I agree. I think you lifted up something that's super important that a lot of us struggle to get away from because of generally that's how we was raised and that's how society puts us in there. At least, no, I take that back. It's not how we were raised. That's how we perceive things when we get introduced to this world. But generally, I feel like growing up, I was raised in part of, or always been a part of something, whether it's family, community, or any collective, if you will. And I think we all, like we talked about before when we, in the recent episodes, we talked about having those unwritten rules that we always follow. So I think lifting up that, getting away from being an individual or getting away from operating from an individualistic perspective is one of those things that is a necessity when you're talking about a movement, right? And I think what you being clear about is that when it comes to building a movement, everything has to be uniform. It can't be that there's almost has to be like an OCD outlook. That nothing can be out of place, right? For this thing to run as crisp and as pure and to sustain as long as you want it to, everything has to work. And I think about all the different movements that we've watched and have come before us. And in those movements, it feels like there were individual paths, if you will, that were like, I take that back, not individual paths. I want to say that individuals were targeted by folks from external organizations that either wanted to see them fall, crumble, or you know what I mean, rip them apart, if you will, to be clear. But I think when you target individuals, you then make them focus on the individualistic perspective versus folks stay in tune or stay in focus, as we all should train physically and mentally inside of a movement, how to how to be uniform in all ways. And I say that to say is that in those movements where individuals were targeted, if they are uniformed, in the ways that we probably haven't just thought about, you know what I mean, in the ways that allowed us to be mentally stable and continue to build stability with, I think they become pretty much almost undefeatable. I mean, and we had this talk before, but I think the only way we can lose is if the mind gets controlled. You know what I mean? It's nothing, if you think about it, any movement, I use the Black Panther Party, and I know I'm not going to take one, but I use the Black Panther Party. But I think one thing I love about that movement is that it was almost always a rebuttal for something, right? One of my favorite things I love that I try to do sometimes without myself being a victim is that when I see black men or black women pulled over, I try to pull up maybe 10 or 15 feet behind them, right? And that's when they used to do. Now, granted, they had their guns and everything else. But however, that kind of mindset and that kind of uniformity, and it happens wherever. It doesn't matter who they like. It doesn't matter where they from. It's if you are a black person inside of a car and you're being pulled over by police officers, it is imperative that this thing happens in place. You know what I mean? So it's more so, it's not like a choice. You know what I mean? It's more so you got your system. Exactly. Like exactly. So I hope that was clear. But yeah, that's my.
Can I add to, because like you said, actually before we got on camera, we talked about that earlier. I think one of the things that is critically is important to this, and we talked about this on the show as well, is political education, right?
Yeah. Like, oh my gosh. Yeah.
Steve Biko with South Africa, the freedom fighter, said something that I think is just really important to note here. He said the most powerful tool that the oppressor has is the mind of the oppressed. And many people have written about that. Frantz Fanon in Wretched of the Earth talked about it. Paulo Freire talks about it. Bell Hooks talks about it. But if people have your mind, and one thing that I talk about really is that, like, white supremacy, the first place that it has its impact, before it has an impact on anything that we do or our material conditions, it's our mind. It shaped our socializing institutions. And so, like, it ends up being not only individualism is the thing that go against us, but we actually don't respect each other, but we don't respect systems either. That's the other thing too. So we think that because systems have had a problem, we had problems with systems, now it seems that systems are the the enemy rather than the inertia or the very values that made that system is the problem.
Exactly.
And so, like, you know, just thinking about that, like, yo, the way that, you know, and I know we gotta move on, but like, it's like the way that the mind is, like, you gotta train your mind in so much that it's like almost second nature. In the case that you talked about, that you see somebody black, boom, I'm pulling over.
Exactly.
And they equip with the law, they equip with everything that they need to do that. But it's like, instead of, you don't think about it, it's not a choice.
That's my point. You have to detach, right? You have to be a part of something outside of you in order to be able to operate and be able to be productive inside of that system.
So like, I'm sorry, like a movement toward black land and food sovereignty, right? One goal, if you think about it, you buy black first.
Right.
So if you're looking for cucumbers, right? There's a good brother, possibly a good brother behind the camera who don't like cucumbers, right? But if he wanted to get cucumbers or like cucumbers, you might say, hey, look, I want to get some cucumbers. And so it shouldn't be that it's an option that like, oh, yo, where can I get the cheapest one? Dang, I'm going to go to Walmart.
Right.
That might not, you may not be moved by cheap. You want to be moved by your principle, your value of buying black first. So then the question would be, where's the closest black producer or farmer that I can get cucumbers from? And if there's not close, then where else can I get it? I mean, that's what the Jewish community like did and do.
That's what
like,
I was
it's
gonna
like
say, bro.
I mean, generally speaking, I won't like cast a large net, but in order for you to have group economic power, like Dr. Claude Anderson talks about, and Powernomics and many of his other books, he talked about like, yo, you have to be able to have what he called these black codes, these rules, and you got to go by those rules, and you got to have things that lift you up. Like you get celebrated when those rules are kept, and when they don't, you got to have other ways that you know that.
So, and I swear to God, we're gonna jump to the bell questions. I say one last thing, and I think one thing you did a really good job of lifting up, bro, is talking about how when we step away from that individualistic perspective, right, and we are operating inside of that system, and we understand our role, and we understand why our role is that, we do a better job at I guess rippling those waves into our families and other communities that we are a part of. And when you think about it, like you say, even using the small case of the cucumbers, a black dad of a black family going to buy cucumbers from a black farmer is a statement. You know what I mean? It's because I mean,
that's strong.
And you think about how you grew up, and I'm gonna be real about this. You think about how you grew up. I grew up let's find the cheapest, right? And that's just what it was. So growing up, it was always finding cheap. I come into my blackness, I learn about myself, I learn about my history, I learn about the people I'm connected to and the ancestors. I buy black every time I can now, and it's not always just a you know what I mean. It's not always just about putting money into the black community. I want people who black to see me buying black too. It has to be like, even now I want to be clear, even if I have disagreements with people or friends, whatever the case may be, that doesn't stop what I think should happen on an economic standpoint inside the black community. So I say that to say is that like really taking a Lee out of it and putting a black man inside of a black community into it. You know what I mean? Because then when you roll with that, everybody's doing the same thing, no matter what goes on or
that's
whatever
how you
the
build
person.
power, Lee.
Exactly. All right, we shed a lot on the perspectives, and it felt good, man.
Real good.
It's one of those deep dive topics. I hope to. I know we're going to talk about it more in the past, and I hope to have y'all tune in, and we'll talk about that at some point as well. However, though, y'all know what time it is. Y'all know what time it is. That's a good way to start it off right there. So it's time for the bell questions. The first question we got, and this is from, is that Nancy? First question we got, it says, how do we ensure that the movements and infrastructures built today will serve those who sit in the shade under our trees?
I didn't want to interrupt you. You said Nandy.
Nandy, I'm sorry, okay. I'm sorry, I apologize, Nandy. Please forgive me for that. That's a pretty cool name, too. Nando's. How do we ensure that movements and infrastructures built today will serve those who sit in the shade under our trees? Yeah. So, you want to go first, or you want me to dive first?
Go ahead. Yeah.
So, first off, Nandy, let me compliment you on that shade under our trees, because that's really important. I think, and I say this a lot, and I say it to keep it an iteration of it, and I want folks to understand or keep it in the back of their mind. But the kind of work we're doing, you gotta understand, you're not gonna live to see what you're trying to accomplish be accomplished. Yeah. You think about our ancestors, and we're sitting here now carrying their work, and there's going to be folks who carry our work, and it's clear that we're dealing with issues that are time sensitive, but are time consuming as well. Yeah. So thank you, Nandy, for that question. However, so to answer your question, when you talk about building platforms and building movements that serve those that's going to come after us, I think of course when we talked about this before, but I think one of the major things we do, you said it earlier, is the political education piece. I think that has to happen. I think it's the first thing we do, right? I think the first thing we do is study our ancestors and study the movement before us.
Yeah.
It has to be clear of what kind of movement we're trying to build, understanding that all movements aren't meant for every issue, or if you will, are addressed in every way. I think we have to be clear about the kind of movement we have, who's involved in it, and why are they involved in it. And I don't, and I hope this makes sense to you, Natty, but I don't think it's the case where you have to build or tailor one platform to make sure that though it serves those after us. I think we have to tailor and be intentional about the processes we use, because that's what's essentially being passed on. The platforms may change, the platforms may shift, you know what I mean, maybe edited, you know what I mean, they modified, however you may see it, you know what I mean, or, you know what I mean, who knows, we might find liberation within the next 5 years and the platform might look completely different. So I say to say that we can't put all our eggs in that basket. I think what we would put all our eggs is the processes that have continuously floated through our ancestors to us, and then to answer your question, Nandy, to the folks after us. So I hope that's clear. Just understanding the pathway we're going to take and understanding how we're going to do things. As long as we're intentional about the house is what's going to get studied and what's going to get carried on and evolved. So yeah.
I think, man, I actually think that's a good segue. The other thing I would say, man, in borrowing from something like a quote that I heard, an old adage, is like, never mind, I don't remember the adage right now, but but the idea that what you're talking about in terms, that wisdom is ancient, right? Like the things like what you talked about, those processes, that's the ancient stuff that we got from people. We're modernizing it, if you will, by utilizing, like you said, the platforms we have and or the platforms that we're creating. Right. And that's what's evolving, but that wisdom is never changing. It's constant, it always is what it is.
Exactly.
And so with that being said, in addition to what you said, I actually completely agree with that, with the processes and building those out. And I think that I'll talk about how we're doing that actually right now and stuff like this, like we're recording,
right.
Keep it. If anything, exactly, and I mean, we've been blessed to be able to have a position in the organization that actually documents the here and now and share the stories for the here and now. So you might see a flyer, you might see some things, but let it be known that it's being documented, all of the things, the intimate conversations we're having, our thought processes, things that we're writing down, our intentions, our goals, because those are the things, like Lee said, that folks will study,
right.
And you know, and so when we talk about, you know, those who will benefit from the shade of our tree. The one thing that I also would say is that those who, because I believe that what Brother Lee was talking about, liberation is a process. It's the process of liberating. The key part of what we're doing as well has to be connecting with young people who are part of this and developing and building leadership opportunities. So the reason I lift that up is because, like, a key part of organizing, if you're going to do it well, has to be leadership development.
There you go.
The people who are quote unquote in leadership now should not be the same people in leadership in the next 10 years. And with that being said, it doesn't mean that Brother Lee or myself, since we're the only people you see here, there are other people who are part of our work right now, tons of people that we represent in this space. But it needs to change, and it will change. So the question becomes, well, who's able to do what? Who's able to learn how to do fundraising? Who are the people who are learning how to build campaigns? Who are the people who are learning how to evaluate? Who are the people who are learning outreach and all of those things? Those are the types of things that we got to get people to understand. And so I think that that's the way to do it, right? So documenting, sharing those things, but making sure that people are perfecting those things in the here and now, right? Well, in the here and now, and that folks are understanding those things. And so that's why going back to the political education piece, I think is important, and deep relationship building is equally important as well.
Yeah, and if I could really quick before we jump to the next one, I'll be quick, but I think that's one thing I was going to say. So that relationship building piece is super important because I had a panel recently with some beautiful folks folks doing food work, and we talked about political education. And one of the things I wanted to stress is that political education is not a classroom thing. Yeah. It's not a like sit at the desk and let's talk about it and write answers to a question. Yeah. It comes through conversation like this, and why that's important because I'm sitting here thinking as Brother Eric is talking. If you can even imagine a world where we didn't know Malcolm came through here, we didn't know King came through here, we didn't know Fred Hampton came through here, we didn't know Fannie Lou came through here, Georgia Gilmore, right? So you think about if that stuff wasn't archived, if there was no pictures, if there was no readings, if there was no writings, no stories, no movies, what all we got? And then we really got to lean on the ancestors to pass down experiences. Absolutely. You know what I mean? So I said it to say is that's why the processes are important because while we archive as much as we can, a lot of that stuff is possibly, or it can possibly, or maybe not in this day and age with the media, but in times it could possibly be restored. It could possibly be destroyed and not be restored. And then all you got left is the story to tell, or you know what I mean, the lessons to pass on.
So no, with that, bro. I mean, I know we got another question to get to that Jordan sent in to us, but I think that I think to what you're saying, man, I think the important part too is like when you talk about infrastructure as a part of movement work, we gotta also make sure that those whatever the infrastructure things are, if it's a farm, if it's a business, whatever it might be, that we also have solid business dealings, that we got record keeping, that we're clear about things. That don't mean that an enterprise won't fail because we know that that's a part of it. But if the thing is to build businesses that last, not just that feel good.
Absolutely.
Right? So we got to make sure that we're doing the work to make sure that they stay around in addition to the people who are development leadership and political education and all of that. We just need to make sure that that's like that we're building into that. So I know we got another question that I think leads into that, but I think that that's important and being part of that, people know that that's happening.
Exactly. No, I agree with that. I actually want to, so the next question I'm going to lift up, this is from Jordan. So it says, with the understanding that movements aren't flawless and there will be setbacks, how do we build a movement with restorative consequences for members and allies? And so when I read this one, it gave me the chills, right? I'm reading this book right now, right? And I guess with the piece that really gave me the chills was the members and allies. I like that because one, it's very clear that we can't get out of this hole by ourselves. It's clear that we aren't the work is not gonna just be done by us. It's called Blood in My Eye by George L. Jackson. So in George L. Jackson, he was in prison. It's a long story. I won't take a lot of time telling the story. However, one of the things he says in the book, he talked about how the movements aren't about like us, you know what I mean, coming together and putting our lives on the line for just, you know what I mean, the collective and the community. Because, you know what I mean, the granted thing is we've approached every movement ready to die, right? We approach every movement with this or else, right? And he was very clear that, like, the conversations and the political education and the archiving, that's not to get black folks to say, I want to be a part of the movement and I'm willing to die for this. Because whether we like it or not, we are the ones who will die first. He said the reason that we need to have those conversations with allies is because we need to get them to understand and get them to get to a place where they can die too. Where they can sit on the front line too with the same urgency and the same passion we have. If we can get them there, then that's where the perspective shifts, right? So I wanted to lift that piece up. I think it's important because, like I said, it makes space for the allies, but it also makes space for them to be uniform, how we talked about, be a part of the movement, and figure out their position and their role inside of that movement.
I know we're closing up, but I would say, man, I actually agree with you, and I think my short answer is I don't know, and I think there will be different ways, but I think that in order for you to have that and having that conversation about accountability, we first have to have these social norms, these social contracts that we all agree to when we're a part of this struggle. That is either public or not public or whatever, and we share with allies and the members. But I think equally important, man, that I think the question about restoration and regeneration, I would add to that. If we're having movements where people are feeling like they're getting something from the work that they're putting out, I think it has to be in the same way. And I would argue that we talk about this on this show often, any winning team, championship team, any winning dynasties, if you study dynasties of like over time historically, whether they're in Africa or Asia, the one thing that you have to learn is that what's very clear is the consistent, like the education piece, we talked about it, the inheriting not only the stuff, but the systems and the relationships and all of that. But what's also important to note is that you have to be able to have very clear boundaries.
Yes.
Right? And so in having
piece.
those boundaries, I think it has to be that people have consequences. I don't know what they look like,
Right.
but I think that, you know, there are many ways to do it. I mean, from medieval things that, of course, like from you can look at different kind of consequences.
Over time, yeah, no.
But there are different consequences over time. Like, you know, I think about religious context, and they got people. I think about Nation of Islam, where if somebody went against the rules, they had to sit in the back, or they couldn't come to the mosque for a couple of weeks or whatever the offense was.
Suspension, yeah, no.
People might not like it, but I think we have to be able to think about the different kinds of consequences that are restorative, that don't make people feel like it's something. But let's just say somebody, and we figuring this out at BYI.
Absolutely.
If somebody don't hold down what they supposed to do, they miss something, and somebody else got to do it. Maybe it's going to put in, like, all right, somebody had to put in 3 hours worth of work.
Right.
Then you got to put in 3 hours helping somebody else,
Absolutely.
right? It might be 3 hours helping an elder in the community, something that helps to build the movement in a way that it don't feel like, oh, I'm imprisoned by this thing, but it feels like, you know what, I'm doing something good, but then again, I know it's a consequence. You know what I'm saying? Like,
exactly.
So that's all I'm saying.
No,
like,
that's powerful,
like that.
bro. I think that's powerful. You really got my gears, Brandon. We're gonna shut it down, but I think what's clear is that like a lack of consequences means imbalance inside of any movement, any infrastructure. It can't be. It's not just okay, you know what I mean? We understand things happen, and you know what I mean? We understand that people are human, and things are going to not always go as planned, but however, that's no excuse, like you said, to fill in those gaps. That's real, bro.
And if I can say this honestly, when we talk about
movement,
movements, if we don't have those kind of things in place, we're actually being negligent.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because as the question says,
deep, bro.
it will be flawless. Like
That's
people,
deep, bro.
any system that's done by people will be an imperfect system because imperfect people set it up.
Right.
And so with that being said, if it's something as small as, like I said, and it's something we've been working through,
Right.
somebody don't come to a session that we're supposed to have and they 2 minutes late. That 2 minutes mean that you got to give an hour to cleaning up the house of an elder in the community. That's a consequence, but it ain't something that people feel like, I'm gonna lose my head for it, I'm whatever. But it's like, there's gotta be consequences that are also gonna build the movement as well. So if we don't, seriously, like, we failed our people.
Exactly.
We failed our people because then it means that you can do whatever you want.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
You can't get where you say you want to be without that. You feel me?
And it goes back to that individualistic versus the collective perspective we talked about earlier.
Yes, sir.
But yeah, hey, this was good, yo. This was good. Nandy, Jordan, thank you for your questions. I'm sorry, Brandon, we didn't get to your question. But I promise y'all.
I think we spoke on it though.
Yeah, no, so definitely, and I'll even read it to share, but Brandon asked how does folks go about establishing or finding roles and positions inside of their community, as well as what does the distribution of accountability look like? And I think that was something that we really touched on.
Can I just speak to that? Actually,
yeah, absolutely.
But I would succinctly say it's about organization.
Yeah,
you can't have that. You can't have a role if you don't know where you're going. Or the one thing that Kwame Ture talks about, or Stokely Carmichael for some people, he talks about organize, right? Institutions fight institutional oppression. There is no role if there's no institution to tell you what role you need to have.
Right.
Or if there's no, and by institution, it don't have to have, a name and da-da-da-da. It could be your community group, your block group. It could be your family.
Right.
Whatever that might be, have the people be a part of it and get clear about what your systems are, what your goals are, and what roles are within that. And that's the only way to do it. But in my opinion, if you're looking at it from a movement context, you got to connect to other things too. Because if you do it, then you're only doing your own. It's individualism at the organization.
I'm about to say that. You by yourself. No, that's exactly. So that's real.
Anyway,
that's powerful.
You're talking about building a network. And so if you're going to be connected to that network, you got to be clear about, you know what I mean? Like, you got to, but also something we working on in our organization is also like, who are you?
Right.
So like, if your role is as a financial person, but you should be more of a warrior, then and it's not a place for you to be a warrior financial person, then you got the wrong role in that movement. So anyway, I'm sorry.
No,
you got to be organized in order to have a role or accountability.
Yeah, and I think that I'm gonna close it up, man. But I'm excited about it. That accountability piece is super powerful, though, man. Hey, so this was good, y'all. We're gonna get opportunities to talk about this more in the past. We're gonna get opportunities for y'all to jump on with us and talk about it more in the past. So I appreciate y'all for tuning in. We starving as usual, but it's all good. Clearly, y'all just don't. We're gonna start calling it the Payday Show. We're gonna start calling it that we ain't got nothing to eat for lunch.
Or hungry show.
Hungry show, something like that. You know what I mean? So yeah. So look, I appreciate y'all. Please find us at Black Yield on Instagram, on Twitter, Black Yield Institute on Facebook, and I look forward to seeing y'all 2 weeks from now. Peace, y'all.
Peace.